It's Friday, October 26th. Let's talk PlayStation. So once again, big news comes out right after I uploaded last week's video. Super annoying because I already filmed, edited, and uploaded the video, so I can't talk about it. But we'll cover it now, and we'll do it first since it's rather old at this point. But Days Gone has officially been delayed. The game was supposed to come out February 22nd, 2019. Sony announced on the PlayStation blog it has been moved to April 26, 2019, which is good. They actually were open with saying it was because it was a crowded month. And I find it funny that they're saying month because actually the 22nd specifically was very crowded with Metro Exodus and Anthem. And when all those games got announced for that specific day and everybody was going crazy because it's like, oh my god, my wallet's going to hate me at that point, I thought, okay, these are three big publishers. Somebody's got to know that they got to move. I didn't think EA was going to budge. I thought they were the least likely. I thought, okay, maybe Metro, and I think Sony might push Days Gone. And sure enough, it was Days Gone. I don't think they need more time, actually, because they also say, oh, we need more time to polish the game. I don't think they needed the polish. I think this is just really a matter of them. They were going to hit that date, but sure, and they were the first ones, I believe, to announce the 22nd. And then everybody else followed up with, oh, we're also doing the 22nd. And so he's like, oh, God, now we got to move. But good, because I'd rather the game be kind of in its own area and have its own time for reviews, discussion, and things like that. I don't think Sony's ashamed of the game maybe not doing as well, but certainly when you've got those other high-caliber games, there needs to be a little bit of breathing room, and so now Sony will get that in April. Speaking of which, another Sony game that was delayed this past week, which most people probably either forgot about or don't care about, but Concrete Genie. This was actually moved to early 2019, and it was, for the longest time, still slated to come out around at some point in 2018, but as the months roll on, like, clearly it's not going to come out, and we're still waiting for Dreams to get delayed because they still say 2018. Clearly that game's not going to come out this year. They still say there's a beta this year. That's somewhat hard to believe, but okay, back to Concrete Genie. This is also delayed as well. Just as a key reminder, this is from Pixel Opus. This is a developer in San Mateo. This is a Sony Interactive Worldwide Studio. Some people don't seem to remember that, but they had done Entwined in 2014 on PS4 as well. So this is actually their second game. And it seems quite clear that they're a very artistically approached studio, which I enjoy, but I know that this is the kind of game that not many people enjoy, or it doesn't have the best reach, I guess. Speaking of a game that's not going to be for everybody, which is ironic given the name, but Everybody's Golf VR was also given it wasn't like delayed, but given like a certain placement of time of when we can expect it, because we knew it was going to be 2019. They've just changed that to spring 2019, which who knows if that's really going to be the date because we haven't seen a whole lot of footage of it. However, Sony's talking about it so offhandedly, like they know it's not going to be that possibly big of a title, so maybe it will come out at a budget price of $30, $40 or something. Or maybe it will come out as a full $60 retail release, but they announced it so uncaringly, and they've been talking about it so uncaringly, like it's just kind of like, oh yeah, here's another game that we're just throwing at you, and it's another VR title, and we're just using the Everybody's Golf IP for this. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're putting a whole lot of thought into it, but we'll see more when we see more footage of the game and like how it starts to pan out during like pre-release and things like that. So moving on to PlayStation Network name changes, the first users are being invited into the beta of being able to change their names, and this will actually come with a firmware update 6.10. So interesting that it will need a firmware update. Well, surely it will, because there's got to be something on the UI to reflect the ability to change your ID. But anyway, we've got some details about the preview program and kind of what users are agreeing to when they sign up if they choose to change their name. And we got to go through all these because when you read all the disclaimers and how Sony's trying to cover their ass basically in terms of liability, they're basically covering for all worst case scenarios of if you change your name, this is what could possibly happen. And here are all the caveats and dangers you face if you choose to change your ridiculous name from over 10 years ago to something a little bit more modern and a little bit more you. Basically what they're saying is that not all games and applications for PS4, PS3, PS Vita, and other PlayStation systems support the online ID change feature. If you change your online ID, you may lose access to content, including paid-for content that you have acquired for your games, including content like add-ons and virtual currency. You may lose your progress within games, including game save data, leaderboard data, and progress towards trophies. Parts of your games and applications might not function properly, both online and offline. Your previous online IDs may remain visible to you and other players in some places. The online ID restrictions during the preview section of it. The first change is free for all users. The second change will be charged $10 PS Plus subscribers will receive 50% off. If your previous online ID violates any of the current terms of service, you will not be able to revert back to your old ID. You can revert back to your previous ID once per account during the preview period. Sub-accounts cannot utilize changing your ID. After you change your ID, it may take a few hours for the services and applications to reflect on the new ID. If for any reason you have any issues after changing your online ID, you can revert back to your previous ID at no charge. However, you may only do this once during the preview period. Changing back to your previous online ID may not fix the issues you encountered, so you may not recover all or any of the lost content, progress, or functionality. And if you want to change back, do so as soon as possible, because changing back to your previous online ID may affect content, game progress, and functionality associated with your new online ID. My lord, those are all some pretty heavy caveats. They sound a lot worse than what we were originally told. And the thing is, like, they kind of said that initially in that blog post, but now that it's like getting to the point where they have to deliver the feature, they really have to make it understood, like, listen, you could, in worst case scenarios, this might happen. And you got to assume it's been tested in-house, so they know what happens with certain titles where it may not work properly, and they might have an instance where, yeah, like maybe an add-on just isn't properly associated anymore. This seems seriously game-breaking, and this is more eye-opening in the fact of it doesn't look like they solved anything. When we keep talking about PSN IDs, we talk about the PlayStation Network infrastructure and how the way it was laid out how many years ago, it just wasn't built to support the changing of IDs. So we thought, okay, Sony's been spending all this time, all these years, having engineers look into how they could rework the network to support this. The way this program sounds, it sounds like they just said, screw it, because we can't get it to work that way. We just can't rebuild it. We can't do it. So we might as well just offer it just the way it is and just be like, look, don't go backwards. Don't, if you're the kind of gamer that buys new games constantly, you're constantly trying new things, and you don't go back to old stuff, this is the program for you. Change your ID to your leisure. But God forbid you possibly go back and play Resistance Fall of Man on your PS3, even offline, mind you. Something may just not work properly. And I think that would probably be the pretty big case. I think it would be a lot of PS3 and Vita stuff that would have maybe a major issue. And it probably would get ugly to the point where, like, it just all of a sudden doesn't recognize your stuff, or the game, who knows, maybe it crashes upon startup because it has to understand, like, let's say it is an online game and it tries to, you know, the second you're trying to connect to the online part of the game, and it just all of a sudden doesn't know how to function properly because it's trying to understand your ID and you don't have that anymore. It doesn't exist on your profile, but you're still into the game. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff gets super muddy, super buggy. Not to throw a pun at you there, or a little rhyme, but that's going to totally crash right in front of your face, right? So they must have tested this in-house, and they got to know that they've maybe got a 5%, 10%, 1% amount of games that are, like, really screwing up, and thus they have to put out this disclaimer. You got to keep in mind, PS3 has over 1,000 games across physical and digital and things like that. Same with Vita. Vita's got a ton of titles. They can't test every single game, and they certainly cannot ask developers to go patch their games. Some developers don't even exist anymore to support those titles. So they literally were just like, screw it. You can change your name, but full steam ahead, buddy. Don't look back. So, how about Spider-Man? Now, Spider-Man's been out on the market for over a month now. We got some interesting details. So, we had talked about how it was the fastest selling PlayStation exclusive ever, which was a crazy good accolade. But, of course, hearing that accolade, you got to think, man, there's probably some other accomplishments in there. Well, now we got that thanks to the recent MPD data. September's best-selling game was Spider-Man, of course. The highest launch month dollar sales for any exclusive in PlayStation history, apparently. The 7th biggest all-time launch on PlayStation platforms, and launch month sales 37% higher than all other Spider-Man game launch months combined. It was the 3rd best-selling game of 2018, and that's so far, mind you. So Spider-Man could have the possibility of being #1 overall by the end of the year. What's crazy is that those are super impressive numbers and achievements that game made, and like, I knew Spider-Man was going to do good. It's like, okay, Insomniac's handling it, the footage looks great, this looks like a really great game that a lot of people are going to go out and enjoy. But my god, to see it, like, eclipse certain games that came out this year, like, We had God of War come out this year. Detroit wouldn't have been that crazy good, but we had Detroit come out this year. You got Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, surely Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably going to crush Spider-Man into submission, and I'm talking about full-on spider on the wall, not a cup, not a shoe, a sledgehammer. Red Dead's probably going to overtake it easily, but I just can't believe, I'm almost shocked, like, wow, that many people bought Spider-Man. Now, while we're on the topic of Spider-Man, another thing that happened this past week was a patch for the game, and it added a new game plus mode, which is pretty cool, some enhancements to the photo mode, and that's what I want to touch on specifically, because one thing that added in the photo mode was a new sticker, which is some puddles. So if you think this game has a lack of puddles, now you can stick them around everywhere, so you feel that the game is more visually enhanced, because of course this is a callback to the controversy earlier before the game came out, where one specific scene of the game originally was shown off with a lot of puddles. Then later revisions of that scene had less water and puddles in that area. People thought it was a visual downgrade, which was humorous because then the game comes out, it looks stunning and beautiful, and there wasn't really much of any downgrade at all, and in many cases the game's actually improved. And so that was pretty savage of Insomniac. I love that. That's totally cool. I love that somebody, an animator, went out of their way to be like, oh yeah, let me just make these puddles to show that internet the big ol', you know. Now, do you remember PSX 2017, and do you remember that they announced a medieval remake type remaster back then, but they only showed like a 50-60 second clip, just text, it was all black, no gameplay, nothing like that, and we haven't heard anything about it since? Well, it looks like that's finally about to change. So apparently Shawn Layden is going to be coming onto the PlayStation Blogcast within the next week or so to finally give us an update about the game, which is great because it's been gone for so long and we don't even really know the extent of, like, is it a remaster or is it a full-on remake? Like, how much are they really going to go back and retouch? Because we have so many examples nowadays of, like, all these different variations, whether it's like a remake type reboot like the Ratchet & Clank 2016, or if it's just a remaster like many HD collections on the PS3 or PS4, for example, or is it like a very heavy remake like the Crash Insane trilogy, the Master Chief collection, things like that, where they really go back, update textures, and completely redo things. Anyway, that's a really long tangent. Point being, we're going to get some new information. Here's the really interesting part, though. The voice actor for Sir Daniel Fortescue, Jay Gunn, and he's the voice actor for the original games, not actually the whoever they used for PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This is the guy from the original games. He tweeted recently a picture of him saying so the picture was him with a bucket over his head, and it said, oh, the things I do to prepare for work or whatever. And if you don't know, of course, this is how he actually recorded his original lines with a bucket over his head. Seems pretty clear to me that he's doing new work for possibly Medieval. And if you go to his profile, he's also retweeting Medieval things, so it seems quite obvious that, yeah, he's preparing to do some voiceover work. Here's the timeline's weird here, because they announced this remake in 2017. You would think, okay, this is like well along now. Maybe we'll get like a trailer or something. Is he just now starting voiceover, or has he been doing voiceover? Like, that seems a little weird. Of course, the timing's pretty good in the sense of Shawn Layden's finally going to talk more about it, and now he's like getting more teasery with like what he's doing. So maybe he's already completed his lines or something, and he knows news is going to be coming out soon. But either way, we will probably more than likely have some more information to talk about this next week or the week after that. Now, this next news story I found really interesting. The CEO of CCP Games, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, so I apologize, but Hilmar Vigar Peterson, I tried. He was discussing how the company is moving away from VR, and they canceled all their VR projects right after they released Eve Valkyrie on the PlayStation VR, because the VR market is not nearly as big as they thought it would be. So he was actually quoted as saying, "We expected VR to be 2 to 3 times as big as it was, period. You can't build a business on that. The important thing is we need to see the metrics for active users of VR. A lot of people bought headsets just to try it out. How many of those people are active? We found that in terms of our data, a lot of users weren't." Now, there's two things that I think of right away with those comments. Number one, he's right. Absolutely, that is the case. Not just in gamer mindset, but certainly in actual projections, the market isn't where a lot of people thought it was going to be. Sony's lowered their internal projections, and many analysts have lowered their predictions. I'm sure Oculus and Vive were expecting a lot more headsets, and those are already low volume unit sales for those headsets. So with PlayStation VR being the market leader, you know, having them lower the projections is certainly not good. And this is premium headsets, mind you. So this is excluding the bozo lame ones that are for your smartphone for 360 video. Those suck. We're not really counting those, but more so the premium aspect of that kind of industry of larger budget games. And so absolutely that is the case. The other thing I'm taking away from it is that, well, CCP, you released a very big budget game on brand new hardware, which, and mind you, I say hardware loosely. I mean, it's essentially its own platform, but it's like kind of a peripheral, but not really, because it still requires a PS4. But essentially, it's its own platform. So the kind of metaphor or jumping off point we're going off here is a platform launch. They're releasing a brand new game, big budget, on a platform launch. That's always a very rock and a hard place situation with many developers and publishers, which is that sometimes you don't want to be, you know, there's benefits and there's cons to doing that, which is that, okay, if I release a really good game with this platform launch, most day one buyers are gonna, you know, buy my game with it. But the fact of the matter is, it's a brand new platform. There's not going to be any systems out there, or hardly any systems out there. So inherently, you've got to have like a 1 in 2 buyer attach rate with this piece of hardware that you're releasing on, or you're probably not going to do all that well. And so you've got to have a really good, compelling experience, a really great game, something that everybody's going to buy. And that's why Nintendo is sometimes really the only hardware manufacturer that can really get away with that kind of attach rate, because they can release a brand new piece of Nintendo hardware, and whether it's attached right off the bat with a Mario or a Zelda or something, chances are they're going to have a huge attach rate of like 1 in every 2 systems. Usually a buyer would typically pick up that game. And Eve Valkyrie was a pretty complex game, and it came out at a full price. And yeah, PlayStation VR is expensive, and so you assume that consumers certainly going to pick up a game or two. Granted, they're already a few $100 in at that point. There was actually a lot of good options for PlayStation VR at that point already. There was a lot of free content. There was a lot of cheaper content. A lot of those games didn't really do all that well. So right off the bat, I think Eve Valkyrie wasn't going to be that great for them to begin with. And I guess a third brand new point is that, well, it's the same discussion we've always had. Yeah, VR isn't quite where it was supposed to be just yet, but we don't have to make it such a conclusive discussion, because we all know that this is the first iteration of virtual reality hardware. And if it's this cool and interesting and experimental right now, good lord, it could look 10 times more awesome 10 years from now. And that's the exciting part of the conversation. But of course, we have to have these growing pains now. And that's where CCP found themselves, and they didn't like it, and so now they're not doing any more VR stuff. I hope that they revisit soon, because Eve Valkyrie was actually a quality VR title. Now, for this last news story, I'm not sure how much we can really talk about this or create a discussion out of this, but this company, Sandvine, released some data regarding internet usage and internet downloads, and just some interesting data, and it gave a good breakdown of like where all of our internet usage worldwide is really coming from and what people are really doing and things like that. Of course, Netflix is up there, YouTube's up there. 56% of all internet traffic is downloads. But what's interesting is that PlayStation downloads, actual PlayStation internet connections and things like that, accounted for 2.7%, which sounds little in theory, but given the actual extrapolation of the data, 2.7% is massive. And it's amazing that it has that much. I was legitimately shocked to see that. I was like, oh my god, how could it have something even remotely more than 0.5%? Like, that's incredible. 2.7%, that's a lot of internet traffic. But then I thought, okay, well, let's figure out why that is. All right, well, it's probably the age we live in today, which is 100 gigabyte installs, 50 gigabyte patches and downloads. More and more people are switching to digital, and when you digitally download something, that's again 100 gigabytes, not just an install, 100 fucking flat gigabytes. It's a lot. So PS4 market leadership, I mean, it's, if you're comparing it to Xbox One, that's why Xbox One, I would imagine, didn't make much of an impact on this. Same with Nintendo. So that's a lot. I can't believe PlayStation accounted for 2.7%. But realistically, when you get a better breakdown of everything, you can see, like, it is quite fascinating to see to see all that data. Anyway, let's get into Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you could win a $10 PlayStation Network code. I'd like to congratulate Nikos Manios for winning this week's Let's Talk PlayStation. Sir, you win $10 of PlayStation Network store credit. I will contact you on Twitter. Message me back so that I know you received the message, and I will send you your code. If you would like to win a $10 PlayStation Network code, it's super easy. It's super easy. All you gotta do is follow the link down below to the Gleam website. You can subscribe for an entry. You can follow on Twitter for an entry. You can retweet a tweet for an entry. Maybe I should start putting some more options in there. I want everyone to be encouraged to try and win this code. We've been doing it for 6-7 weeks now, and these are out of pocket for me, so I love giving back to you guys. It's liberating, it's nice, and God, let me pay for your games. Let me. I'm not asking much. So anyway, those were all the news stories that I want to talk about with you guys from this past week. If you didn't see it, the Sony graveyard. I know it's very morbid, but we did a video a long time ago about Sony's worldwide developers, what they're working on, you know, what they're known for. Well, this is the opposite. These are all the developers that Sony's closed, what they were known for, why they were closed. Check that video out. That one took a long time to make because I had to fetch a lot of footage and just a lot of fact checking. It's hard to remember all that kind of stuff off the top of my head, so I love doing more of those in-depth videos. I really enjoy doing those, and I hope you enjoy them too. So, but if you didn't see it yet, check that out. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.